Good morning, how are you? We're back. Ava and Bella are on their way and we are going to put all of the truffles that we made yesterday into the jars. The milk chocolate truffles just didn't work, so they're still really gooey. I guess you need a different chocolate to cream ratio for milk chocolate truffles. So what we're actually going to do is scoop these back out and use them as a ganache on Christmas Day with dessert. So it's not going to be wasted. So late last night I made 2 more batches of dark chocolate truffles. So I did a
sunset?
Yeah, dark chocolate with orange, and I found in the cupboard I found some sort of sunset coloured hundreds and thousands. So they're all rolled in those. And then I did just a plain dark chocolate that I rolled in coconut. So all 4 of our truffles are different flavours still. And they all 4 look different as well. So we've got 4 different ones.
And
so
I think the coconut one might taste good.
Yeah, chocolate and coconut's so good, isn't it?
Well, that one was gluten-free, wasn't it?
No, it wasn't.
Oh.
Sorry. We can make some more though. We'll make some more in France. How about that? Then to try and sort of keep with our sustainability theme of homemade gifts, we've actually got jam jars. I did buy these, but they can be reused because I didn't have enough jars because I'm saving them for passata when the tomatoes in the garden are ripe. Belle's made these beautiful labels, which are made from an old shoebox, I think she said. And then to decorate the jars, we've cut circles. Oh, they go over the lid?
Yeah, so they do.
We've cut circles of my sequin off cups from the studio. And once we put the truffles in, we're going to put the sequins over. I've got a ton of ribbons from the studio as well. And we will tie...
But then it just does
It
that.
won't, because you tie it on with a ribbon. I'll show you how to do it when we do it. So.
Oh, yes, I understand.
Yeah, so you put it over.
And then you get...
And then you tie the ribbon around it like that.
Yeah.
And then you tie the label on with the ribbon at the same time.
Yeah.
So, what we're going to do, we're all set up. The truffles have all been in the fridge overnight. I thought it was probably best to keep them in the fridge because of the cream in them. So what we'll do is we'll put these back into the fridge once they're done before we give them as presents as well, just to keep them nice. Hi Ava, welcome back. How are you?
Good.
Excellent. You got 2 buddies with you today. So we've got Beaks and who's your other friend?
Finley.
Finley. Hi Finley. Alright, let's see our truffles, shall we?
Those are the sunset.
Oh, that's chocolate orange, so that's orange.
Sunset.
Chocolate orange. They were the mint.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Peppermint. See those.
I made them last night because the other ones didn't work.
Yeah, and then we also made some coconut ones.
These are plain chocolate with coconut.
With the coconut ones.
Then we got the chocolate with cocoa.
Yum.
So you got 6 jars each. I reckon start by putting 1 of each in each jar. What do you think?
Yeah.
So if you do the 2 your end, then we'll swap plates. Amazing. Right, we'll swap plates. And now do 1 of each of those in each jar. They look so good. I love the colours. Let's get the lids on them all.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the lid.
So what we need to do, so do you want to write your first label?
Yeah.
Who it's to?
Full stop.
Beautiful. Now we need some ribbon. What colour do you want to give him? Red or gold?
Gold.
Gold. Okay. So if we do that.
I'll give them red then.
What colour ribbon?
Red.
Red. So now what we need to do is put the ribbon. Ava, can you put your hand on top of that and hold it still? So I think if we do that. There we go, there's our first little jar of truffles all done. Looks so cute and Christmassy. There's all the little truffles.
Made it from, okay, I'm ready.
How are you done? You ready to tie yours on?
Yes. Now,
And what colour ribbon would you like?
I think I'll have white. So this is the end of our truffle making. And they look amazing.
They look so good, girls. You've done such a brilliant job.
And
I think if someone gave me one of them as a present, I'd be very happy as my name on one of them.
And they are made with love.
They are. This is a great gift, and they're gonna mean a lot to people, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're very special. You've done really well. So, thanks for coming and being in my videos. It's been lovely having you. So we're gonna get tidied up, and then next for me is back working on the candy cane dress.
Bye!
Okay, so it's time to get back to getting these stripes onto the dress. Thank you all for your input yesterday about whether I should do the crystals or not. You saw at the end of the video yesterday I was really undecided. I crystalled this and then I was just not loving it when I pinned it on, and I still don't love it, and the general consensus was that you prefer the plain as well. And the more I look at it, the more I think that the plain ones are better. It's just too... There's so much going on with all the different stripes already, and the crystals just... They're not adding anything to it. So I think partly because these are too dark, and partly because it just doesn't need it because we've got the sparkle here. So thank you for taking the time to reply and give me your opinion. It was overwhelming, people saying no crystals, so that's what I'm going to go with. I will keep this piece that I've crystalled, and it will get used on something in the future, I'm sure. I'll add it to my little stash. So this decision here not to use the crystals, I think, is a really good time to have a chat about how designs do often evolve when you're making them as well. So don't feel like once you've got your design drawn that it's set in stone. You can change it and evolve it as you're making it. So often that happens at the toile stage. So when you make your toile, you might make some decisions of changes then. Sometimes it happens at this stage, so I'm at the embellishing stage, and what I had envisioned in my head and what I'd envisioned from looking at all the materials together at the start just doesn't work. It's just not right. So don't be afraid to change your design or evolve your design to improve it as you're making it. It often happens when I'm working for clients as well. We'll start putting things together and we'll go, oh, maybe it just needs to do this. Sometimes it's seeing the shape on their body. We'll go, oh, it needs to come in tighter lower, or we need to do this to get the proportion right on you. Sometimes it's because my drawings and description isn't quite what they were imagining in their head. It's really hard to communicate sometimes the exact details of everything until it's coming together in the fabric. So often designs will evolve for clients as we're making them as well, or we'll go, oh my god, this piece of lace needs to go here, or let's do this, this needs to happen, this neckline needs to change slightly. So it's really, really common for me and the way I work for my designs to evolve. I think if you're working in industry and you're working maybe more in mass-produced fashion, it's very different, but for couture one-off gowns that I do, it's very common for my designs to evolve. So yeah, don't be afraid to change up your design, make it what you want, make new decisions as it's coming together to make it come out exactly how you want it. So what I need to do next is make all of the bias binding strips. So I'm going to need 6 of the thin ones and 3 of the thick ones. And then it's going to be a challenge to get them on nice and evenly coming down. So I want them even all the way down to here. And then they're going to spread out as they go around the skirt. So I'm going to make my 6 strips and 3 strips of the 2 widths, and then we'll pin them on. And I'm going to show you how I make my bias binding. Someone commented on the video when I did these ones asking me how I did it. So I'm going to show you exactly how I make my own bias binding. It's a great skill to have because you can't always buy bias binding in the colour or the fabric that you want. If you're going to be making a lot of corsets, making your own bias to finish the edge of the corsets is just gives them a way nicer look than using a shop bought bias. The satin's often cheap and not very nice, so I will show you now how I cut and make my bias binding. To make your bias binding from your own fabric, the first thing you need to do is find the bias of your fabric. So take your selvage and then find your horizontal grain line and match your selvage and grain line up. So make sure that's exactly along where that line is here. So you can see that's my horizontal grain line and that's my selvage. And then this part where you fold it will then be on the bias. Now we cut bias binding like this on this fold instead of along one of the straight edges because it has a little bit of stretch to it when it's on the bias. So I'm doing it like this for this dress because this stretch will mean I can get around the curve. So if I've got one edge that's slightly longer than the other, the bias binding will just curve around it really neatly and it will give me a much nicer finish than if I was to cut it on the straight, which has no stretch to it at all. So once you've found the line of your bias, just cut along there and then you've got your straight bias edge. So I've already done mine because I've already been cutting all the strips for experimenting with what I'm doing. So this is my bias, and because this is really wide satin, my bias is actually, I can cut really long strips off of here. I need to cut 2 widths and join them together for each stripe of my candy cane dress. So I need to cut 12 of the narrow width and 6 of the wider width. So to press my bias binding, I'm using this little contraption. You see that? So what happens is we pull the fabric flat through this end and it comes out folded this end and you press it. So I can now use this to work out what width I need to cut for this. So the width of my binding when it comes out the end is just under an inch. This is 25mm and it's just under an inch. So you need to cut double that. So then I find that I need to just cut a little bit extra. So to use this width of binding, I cut 2 times the width, so 2 inches, and then just another 1/8 of an inch. So I cut 2 and 1/8 of an inch, which is for 25mm. It's about 5.5 centimeters. So it's 2.5, so the 5 centimeters, then another 1/2 centimeter on top. I find just that little bit extra just makes it easier. So I'm going to cut all of my 2 inch 1/8 or 5.5 centimeter strips, and then I'll show you how I join them together. If you've got a rotary cutter and a cutting mat, this is so much faster, but I don't have one. It's something I keep meaning to invest in, and I will do one day, but for now I'm going to have to cut it with scissors, so it's going to take a while. Okay, so what I do is I go along and I mark 2 or 3 pieces at once. So I just use my tape measure and put a mark where I need to cut for 3 of them. And I do that every few inches. And once I've done some marks, I just start cutting between them. The satin's quite slippery to cut on the bias. My scissors need a good sharpen actually. Okay, so I'm just going to carry on cutting all my strips like this until I've got enough of both widths that I need. So for the narrower stripes, I'm using this one, which is about, it gives you about a 1/2 inch width when it's finished. So again, I'm going to cut just over double. So I'm going to do 1 1/8 width for this one. Okay, I've got all of my strips cut. So I've got 6 of that width and 12 of that width. Now each width is not long enough to do a single spiral, so I actually need to join 2 pieces of each width together. To join your strips together to make a long piece of bias, this is my first strip, which I've got satin side up. Then I'm going to take a second strip satin side down and lay it at right angles across here. And then what you do is you stitch diagonally between those pieces. So if I pop some pins in, you'll see how that works. So, and you can line up where it overlaps, and then once it's stitched you trim all this off, and then that opens up like this and gives you that really neat diagonal seam on your bias. So I tend to put my pins that way to hold it, and this is actually sewing on the grain because it's cut diagonally. So make sure it's a nice right angle, stitch across there, trim it. So I'll stitch it and then I'll bring it back and show you what it looks like. So there it is stitched. So I'm just going to trim this so like that, like that, and then just leave a really small seam allowance. And then once this is pressed open like that, you can see we've got that perfect join in our bias binding. So you can keep doing this to create a piece that's the length that you need. So I need to join 2 pieces together to get my bias strips the right length for each stripe. So I'm going to go ahead and join all of my cut pieces into pairs. So these are my 9 pieces all joined into pairs. So I've got my 3 wide single stripes and my 3 pairs of the narrower stripes. So the next thing to do is to press the edges under using these little gadgets. Okay, I'm going to show you how to press it using the wider strip just because it's a bit easier to see. I've got my iron set to the right temperature for this satin to press it nicely, and I've got the steam turned off because I find otherwise you can burn your fingers with the steam. So if you need steam to hold it in place, you can do the first press just with the iron and then go back over it with the steam afterwards. That's what I often do, but yeah, I turn the steam off for the first part. So to start, all you do is through the wider end of the machine. It helps if your satin or your bias fabrics are in a point, so either cut diagonally or cut into sort of a arrowhead. And take your point and just pass it through. And you can see as it comes through, it starts to just fold those edges upwards. So what you want to do to get it started is just sort of hold them with your finger as it comes out of the little bias binding machine and press them. And then pull it along a bit and press and pull and press. So you're just sort of holding it. I'm moving it with these fingers and holding it down with these fingers and pressing it. And you want to keep it straight. It likes to go sideways sometimes. You can see how the heat's holding it in place as it comes out the other side of the iron. And be careful you don't pull it too much, because if you pull it too much, you pull all the stretch out of it. So just doing it really gently so it keeps that stretch. So if I stop there, you can see how it just needs a little bit more steam. But that's how my bias looks on the right side. That's how it looks on the wrong side. And you can see it's still got that stretch to it, so we can get it to go around the curves really nicely. So I'm going to go and keep doing this to do the whole length of all of my pieces of bias, and then it will be time to pin them onto the candy cane dress. Oh, and when you get to the join, just press it open. And then the seam should just pull through your bias binding maker, just like the rest of the satin. Sometimes if it gets a little bit stuck, just give it a little bit of a wiggle. But that only tends to happen if you're trying to use a thick fabric. This one's just come through really easily. That's how the seam looks once it's pressed. So I've been ironing away. I've got my 3 thick bias strips all done. And I've done the first 2 narrow ones. These ones are taking ages. The edge just doesn't want to stay back because it's really narrow. So it's taking me ages to iron all of these. So I've got it started, but I want to get the thick ones on first. However, right now I've got to pop out, take some stuff to Kartika's ready for Christmas Day tomorrow. And I've just got a few last minute errands I need to run for Christmas tomorrow as well. So I'm going to go and do that. It'll probably take me a couple of hours. And then as soon as I'm back, I can start pinning and sewing these on. And I'm trying to figure out in my head how I'm going to get the stripes nice and even on this part. I think I've got it figured out, but when I'm doing my errands, I'm going to be thinking about that too. So I'll see you in a couple of hours and we'll start putting the real stripes on. Hey, I'm back. All my Christmas stuff is done. I've bought the last few things I needed to buy. I've dropped things off to Kartika and mid to see her ready for tomorrow. So now I want to try and get the 3 wider stripes pinned on. So I want the stripes to be even all the way down until where the flare of the skirt starts. So I've been working out I need to measure between each one to get those gaps nice and even. But I need to pin them on one at a time. So I've kind of measured what I've got here because I like that pattern. So I've done one of my little diagrams here, if it makes sense. So got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then number 1 will come round again. That's my stripe. So thick, double, thick, double, thick, double, and then this thick one. I need 3.5 inches between them all, which means when I put one round, I need to make sure it's 21 inches. So 6 times 3.5 inches, 21 inches between the same one as it spirals down. Does that make sense? And then I can measure so that when I put the second stripe on, that will be 7 inches, and then another 7 inches. And then when I do the thinner stripes, I can just measure halfway between the thick stripes and do them. But I think getting that first one on evenly is going to be the trickiest bit. And once I get that, it's going to be easier to do all of the others. So I think I'm going to start by replacing the one with my crystals with one of my new ones, and then I'll pin the other two either side of it, and then I'll get them sewn on before I start doing the double ones. And then when we get down to the bottom here, I want them to finish evenly around the bottom. So I'm going to bring the first one round, just like do the line I want. Then I can use that for the others. So what I'll do, once that's on, I'm going to measure all the way around the hem, split it into 6. Or, I was going to split it into 6, so all 6 rows then finish evenly around the hem, but I'm wondering if I want to separate the 2 small ones at the bottom as well. So we end up with 9 points where things finish. That might be too hard. No, I'll stick with the 6 and I'll keep those 2 parallel. So once I've got my first one pinned on, I'll measure around the hem, mark it into 6 even sections, then I know where each of my spirals will finish as it comes down onto the skirt. Okay, it's proving a bit trickier than I thought to get a nice even width between the spiral, because we're doing it on a curved body, not on a straight up and down cylinder like on an actual candy cane. So I think this is as good as I can get it. And then the pins that I've put in between, that's where the double rows will go. So I think what I'm going to do, I'm really happy with how this is looking. So I'm going to stitch it down to here. And then I'll work on the skirt afterwards. So I'll stitch all of these down to where the flare starts, stitch all of the doubles down to where the flare starts, and then I can make sure the skirt looks good before I sew those into place. So next I'm just going to use this dark red Gutermann thread, and I'm going to hand stitch all of these into place, just doing some tiny stitches on the edge to make it as invisible as possible. I said yesterday, or the day before, I've lost track of the days, why I was hand sewing them on. Another reason for hand sewing them on and not stitching them onto the panels is that I can take these off really easily, and I can then just use the base dress. Because it's a plain white dress, I can give it a revamp and reuse it, restyle it for future dresses as well. So instead of making a whole new dress for something, I can always just take the stripes off and reuse it for something else in the future. So okay, I'm going to use this and hand stitch them carefully into place. Okay, so this is where I'm up to. I've got all of the 3 thicker ones sewn on down to where the flare starts, and now I've pinned on all my double ones. It has been so hard to get these even, really hard, even with measuring, because of the curves it just didn't look right. So I've kind of measured and then done it by eye a bit as well. And I'm actually pretty happy with how it's looking. I like the shape, I like the spiral. I like that we've got this thicker one coming around here. It kind of exaggerates the waist a little bit. Not 100% happy, but I don't think I ever am with anything. So I'm going to leave it like that for tonight. I'm really sorry I didn't get this done in time for Christmas. I really wanted to get it done. But I'm going to work on it over the next couple of days. And hopefully I'll be back on Friday to show you the last part of making it. I'll get all of these sewn on. You don't need to see how I do that. I'm just going to spread them evenly around the skirt part now. and keep hand sewing. And then at the top I'm just going to hand stitch them underneath and do some hand stitching around the zip, so it's nothing crazy. Yeah, and then for the hem I'm going to do a bag hem, so I won't show you that either. I've done bag hems in so many of my videos. Go and watch, I think the most recent one I did a bag hem in was the strapless dress tutorial, so go and watch that if you want to see how I do my bag hems. And that's going to finish the bottom really neatly, and these will end up in the seams of the hem as well. So I'm going to aim to do that over, tomorrow's Christmas Day and Boxing Day, I've got a little bit of time. And then Friday I've got clients and I've got some orders I've got to work on before I go away. But I'm really determined to get this done on Friday to show you the finished dress before I leave to go to France on Saturday morning. So it's 8:30 now. I'm going to go and spend some time with Lily and Graham, then get this video edited. And I will see you, fingers crossed, on Friday to show you the finished dress. Happy Christmas, happy holidays, whatever you celebrate this time of year. Enjoy it, have fun with your family and friends, and hopefully you get some time to relax. And I will see you very soon. Thanks for watching.